friends, welcome to my homestead kitchen, and today we are going to make 1-ingredient fruit leather, maybe 2-ingredient. It all depends on if you decide to sweeten it. So come along with me as I use something I found in the depths of my freezer, and I'm going to turn it into something delicious. This past summer, I prepped peaches for the freeze dryer and the dehydrator. Most of them ended up where they were supposed to go. But recently, I found 2 bags of peaches hidden in the depths of my upright freezer. These are going to become the fruit leather we are making today. I added both bags to a pot on low heat to get started on this process. So it has been a few minutes and I have already added that second bag of peaches, and I just cooked these to a simmer. I went ahead and turned the heat off for right now, but I am going to cook this a little bit longer. And so you can see that this is just peaches and all their juice. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our immersion blender and blend this up. We are going to blend the peel and everything. So let me go grab that. This is an immersion blender. Funny immersion blender story. So when I was growing up, my mom had an immersion blender, and it was like Braun was the brand. And so my older brother and I would always call it the Braunalator. And when Joe and I got married, I always talked about wanting a Braunalator, not really registering that that's just what we called it. And so bless his heart, one day Joe walked into a kitchen store and walked right up to the lady at the register and said, "I want to get my wife a Braunalator." She had no idea what he was talking about. And now, mind you, this is like 22 years ago, so you couldn't just type in Google and pull something up. Yes, that's how old I am. So bless his heart, he tried to get me an immersion blender, aka Braunalator. This one is not a Braun. But let's go ahead and blend up this fruit leather. This is right now at this point just fruit in this pot. After I puree it, I'm going to taste test it. And that's why I say it's 1, maybe 2-ingredient fruit leather, because if this is too sour or needs some more flavor, you can add some honey, you could add sugar, whatever sweetener you like. You can even add spices if you want to. And you can make this with any fruit, any berry. You can make it with any combination of fruits and berries. Toss whatever you want into this pot, puree it and dehydrate it, and you're gonna have some delicious fruit leather. So let's get this mixed up. All right, that looks excellent. I do want to be incredibly careful blending hot liquid like this with a blender like this. It can really hurt you if it splatters on you. So the next step in this fruit leather adventure is I'm going to taste this and see if I need to add anything to it. And like I said, this is just peaches right now. So it really depends on how sweet were the peaches that went into your pot. And it's very hot. I do think it needs a little sweetener to it. So I'm going to add some honey. And then I'm going to cook this down until it is the consistency I want. I like my fruit leather to be a little thicker when it goes on the fruit leather trays, because then a lot of the water, some of the water has already been removed from it, but it also doesn't run off quite as easy. So I'm going to add some honey. I'm going to keep cooking this down for a little bit, and then we're going to pour this on our dehydrator trays. It's really cold in my house, so our honey is a little bit crystallized. I have about this much in my pot. I'm going to add about that much, and we'll see what that does. Just do it to taste. If you want to add sugar, you can add sugar. If you have some other preferred sweetener, go ahead and use whatever you would like. And fruit leather is one of the last things I still use my dehydrator for. I have almost everything that we used to dehydrate, I now freeze dry. And that is something that I didn't expect, because I have been dehydrating food for many, many years now. And I didn't expect the freeze dryer to be as versatile as it is, but I made do and I didn't even know I was making do with just a dehydrator for many years. You were able to process a lot of food through a dehydrator. But for our family, fruit leather and herbs, mostly because the freezer is just always full of other things, are what we're still using the dehydrator for. And I do have 2 dehydrators, and I have a video I will link here where I show the difference between the 2. One is an Excalibur and the other is one of those round ones, and that's the one I've had for many years. My Excalibur I think I've had for about 4 or 5 years now. All right, I'm gonna get this back on the heat. We're gonna cook that for just a little bit and then get it into the dehydrator. While that cooks down, I went upstairs and grabbed my dehydrator. I'm gonna go ahead and get these trays out, and I'm gonna cut some parchment paper to fit my trays. You can get reusable fruit leather trays. I use parchment paper because I don't unwrap it after it comes out of the dehydrator. I roll it kind of like a fruit roll up. So the first thing I'm gonna do to get these trays, I need parchment paper the correct size, is I'm gonna cut it. And I need a knife for that, my parchment paper, and my tray. So I get out a piece that's relatively close to the size I need. And I try and get it as small as I can, so I'm wasting less. And then I'm just gonna take my knife, or you can use scissors, and run it down the edge of the tray. Pull this off. Let's cut that one again. And now I have parchment the correct size. I'm gonna go ahead and do 5 or 6 trays. I'm not sure how many I'm gonna need. This is ready to go. I have my parchment cut, my dehydrator is out. I added a little bit of honey to the peach fruit leather I'm making. I'm gonna move that pot over here and we're gonna start filling our trays. I am just gonna start in the middle, and this is still a little runnier than I would like, but it is really hot. But you can see that it's not completely liquid and running off the edge of the tray. You want it to be thicker on the outside than the middle, because the outside will get done faster than the middle will. And if they're the same, then the outside is going to be more crunchy and dry. So I just kind of fill this up. And then I'm going to use a spatula to just kind of spread this around a bit. I try and keep it away from the edges, but get as close as I can without making a mess. You can see this is pretty thick because as this dehydrates, the water is going to come out of it. Oh, the parakeets are having a party. And it's going to just get smaller and thinner and thinner. All right, so that looks good. I'm gonna move this over to my dehydrator, and I just keep filling these trays and sliding them in my dehydrator until it's full. I will often make large batches of fruit leather at one time and then keep it in my refrigerator, because you can keep the puree in your refrigerator for 5 to 7 days. And then as you are dehydrating one batch, you already have the next batch waiting and ready to go. And I have a huge stock pot that I will use when I do that. But if you make a batch, you don't need to measure, because if you have some left over, stick it in a canning jar in your refrigerator and save it for the next batch. So I am thinking I'm going to get 3.5, maybe 4 trays out of this. And I typically will not add a ton of sugar to fruit leather. My kids are teenagers, so while they do eat it, my husband actually is the one that eats it the most. And oops. And he really likes tart things. So I make fruit leather with Joe in mind when I'm making fruit leather. All right, we're at 3 trays. So it looks like 4 trays is what I'm going to get out of those peaches I found in the back of my freezer. They had been meant for a freeze dryer load, and it looks like I never got around to it. I also have some black cap raspberries in there, but I think I'm going to make some jam with those, so stay tuned. All right, 4 trays. I'm going to get my dehydrator on. We are going to set our temperature to 135 degrees and dry this for 4 to 8 hours. It's really going to depend on the water content of what you have in here. And I always like to rotate my trays halfway through. You don't have to do that, but it can speed up drying time. All right, I have this set and ready to go. I'm gonna hit start, and we will check back on our fruit leather in a little while. It has been about 6 hours, and this peach fruit leather is ready to be rolled, cut, and stored on my pantry shelves. I will roll fruit leather with the parchment on, kind of like a fruit roll-up, and cut it with my kitchen scissors. You can take it off the parchment if you prefer. I will store these in jars on my pantry shelves for about 12 months. Typically, fruit leather is gone before that same fruit is in season again here in our house. I hope you enjoy making your own fruit leather.